This is Will Nunziata, New York City-based director and creator of theater, television, and film. And today I'm absolutely thrilled to be speaking with a renowned mixed media environmental community-based artist, the one and only Michele Brody. Hello, Michele, how are you?
Hi, good afternoon. Doing well, thank you.
Good afternoon. You were born in Brooklyn, raised in Staten Island, now live in the Bronx. Talk about a true New Yorker, Michele. I want to just get right into it. Growing up and being raised in Staten Island, I told you off camera, all of my Italian side of the family live in Toad Hill, Staten Island, or at least most of them. Curious to know what the artistic life of little girl Michele was like. Was it something that you were always fascinated with, something that your parents always noticed you having an interest in? Talk to me a little bit about that time for you.
For me, growing up in Staten Island, I spent a lot of time out in nature. In the neighborhood, I'm on the Jewish side of Staten Island. So the Italian and big hair was on a separate kind of over the hill part of my growing up. But it was really about nature that inspired me. And I was actually really pushed into music early on because my mother played piano. And then eventually she became a photographer. But in terms of being a visual artist, that came much later when my family moved to New Jersey for a while. So for me, it was really about nature, building forts. I was really about enclosing space around me that really gave me security and a place to just be myself.
Well, and I want to parlay that into one of the many disciplines within mixed media that you have expressed yourself artistically, specifically installation art. What is it about installation art for you that kind of activates your imagination and creativity?
Well, it's really about creating a space that you can enter and have a visceral transformative experience. And it's also about exploring materials and taking them off the wall and beyond the commercial art world so that the art becomes almost a creation of like what I felt when I was out in the woods and creating these spaces around me. And also tapping into what we used to do a lot as kids is turn over the furniture and create a fort so that you had this smaller space for just you to let your mind wander. But then I also grew up from a family of builders. My great-grandfather was a builder in Brooklyn, and then my grandfather and my father both in Brooklyn, Staten Island. So there was always this desire to build space for living, working, and just being in.
I love the dimensionality in your work. And again, I want to let the audience know for more on Michele Brody to really get a full purview of her incredible talent, please go to the links below. You know, I feel like what you do, Michele, you explore all dimensionalities, whether it's 1, 2, 3, 4 dimensions. I mean, talk about how interactive performance has played a part in your work throughout the years.
Yeah, I started this project back in 2007 called Reflections in Tea. And I'm an avid tea drinker, and I've always been enamored with the colors of the tea and the stains that they leave in our tea bags. So I started collecting those tea bags, not your traditional Lipton tea, but more loose leaf tea in these special paper filters. And I wanted to collect people's stories about what it means to share time and space with someone. And I started this mobile tea house project where I started off in a coffee cart over in Dumbo section of Brooklyn. And I was in this coffee cart and I invited people to come in, and it was my little tea house. And I served tea and we just shared stories. And it was really about me being there being present for someone else.
I think it's a sentiment we all as humans have I've had to grapple with, especially these past 2 years, within this time where we've all been forced to be still with ourselves, probably really appreciate now more than ever the idea of connection, and dare I say also collaboration. And you've not only collaborated and worked here in the great city of New York, but all over the world, from Costa Rica to France to the Midwest to California to Germany. I'm curious if there were, I mean, it's probably like picking your favorite baby, but is there one experience outside the United States that you hold especially near and dear to your heart?
Mm. You know, really one of my first experiences as a visiting artist and a traveling artist was going to France. We always dream of Paris and France, and I had a chance to be invited to work in a small town north of Paris on the way to Lille. And I landed in France not knowing a word of French. I was in the airport. I didn't know even who I was meeting. I had just had a few emails. And it turned out to be just a life-changing experience. And living in this village, it was back in 1998. And so I was the only American there. And that was when the Monica Lewinsky scandal came out. And all of people couldn't help themselves talking to me about it and how I felt about it. And that, they had Mitterrand, who had a bastard daughter, and they lived with it just fine. And we as Americans were so prudish. But it really taught me about listening, which eventually became part of the Tea Project. It really taught me about looking and exploring another environment, another culture, and having that feed the work as I develop it while I lived there for 2 months,
That's
working
incredible.
intensely and really developing some wonderful, strong bonds with the community there.
And I feel like not only developing bonds, but developing tools in your tool belt as an artist that you have not only been able to give away through your art, but also through your incredible opportunities to be a teacher, guest lecturer, all over. I'm curious to know what it's like when you get to be in front of students, the next generation of the Michele Brodys out there, to be able to parlay some of your experience, your tips, your wisdom.
Well, that sounds like more like teaching for a college level. Most of my teaching has been with young children and with seniors. So both opposite sides of the spectrum, those just coming in and those sort of at that twilight years. And what I really try to share is being honest with yourself and not having any limitations on what you're going to make. Not, there's the typical statement, oh, I can't draw, so I can't do art. And I really try to dismiss that myth and say, that's why I work with so many different materials, because those materials are not embedded with that history of you have to be able to draw something well to make it look like something else. It's really about taking the creativity from within and how the materials let you explore that.
And speaking of materials, can you go into how you began specifically your works with paper? Because again, I want people to go on your website, what you're able to do. I mean, your imagination is boundless. I mean, it's how that all came about for you. Did that begin when you were a little girl?
Wow. Really, the paper making, yeah, it comes out of that interest in nature.
Hmm.
I mean, I've always been loved being outside, and that's such an irony with being in the city, of course. But I thought I was a real nature girl. So after college, I went out west and I went to California, and I thought that was just where I wanted to be. But actually, the culture wasn't for me. And then I tried Colorado, and it's a beautiful, beautiful place. But still, again, I felt like a fish out of water. And really, it wasn't until I came back to New York where I felt like this is home, And so in terms of the paper making, it's especially since I've moved to the Bronx. The Bronx is one of the greenest boroughs, of the 5 boroughs, we have the most amount of green space in comparison to such high density of a population here, and such a mix of cultures, that I find it's been really fascinating to touch into that, those green environments of the Bronx, and to bring that through the paper making, like by actually foraging plants from places like Pelham Bay
Do you head
and
to Van
Bronx Park.
Cortlandt Park at all?
That's the one park I haven't explored as much.
I have a personal connect only because I used to run cross country in high school. That was our home course. And I'm
Yes.
looking at your art and I'm like, Michelle would freaking love, because the trails, there's so many nooks and crannies.
Yeah, this past summer was my first foray into Van Cortlandt Park, and I look forward to spending more time this coming summer. Yes.
Awesome. Well, Michelle, I could speak with you all day. I want to let the audience know, for more on the incredible Michele Brody, you can read more about her right below this video. Michelle, it is so nice to meet you. I'm so excited you're coming on board this incredible new app, FENIX360. I'm so fortunate. I can't believe it. I've interviewed over 1,600 artists all over the world, and about 50 artists overseas specifically who are multimedia, multi-hyphenate artists, especially in the East, you know, because when I look at your when I look at your paperwork as well, it reminds me of many of the artists who work in that medium. And, you know, it just reminds me of the universality of art, right?
Yes, absolutely.
Well, Michelle, it is so great to meet you, and thank you for your time today.
Very good.